Hello everyone and welcome to this special edition of Movin'On Inside. The show will echo many of the themes explored during the latest Movin'On Impact event, which took place in Yaoundé, entitled Powering Electric Mobility Solutions, organised by one of the Movin'On partner, TotalEnergies. I had the pleasure of hosting this exceptional event under the high patronage of His Excellency the Prime Minister, head of the Cameroonian government, alongside many environmentally committed stakeholders. The aim? Put the spotlight on concrete local test and learn initiatives. A major sustainable mobility topic within the agenda of COP27, from which I just came back. I was in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where I met some of the people and younger generations who have already been strongly impacted by climate change and are among the most vulnerable. Their unanimous message: stop talking, start acting. So that's also one of the reasons why I'm thrilled to be with you today to look back to the Movin'On Impact event hosted by TotalEnergies. But who better than Géraldine Pinault to shed some light on this edition of Movin'On Impact, which are generally events that explore initiatives by Movin'On partners from a local perspective. With me, Géraldine Pinault, Head of Sustainable Mobility and Perspective at TotalEnergies Marketing and Service. It's great to see you again. Last time we met, that was in Yaoundé. How are you?
Fine, Asha. Great to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. And precisely, we're going to speak about Yaoundé, about the Movin'On Impact event. But before that, probably remind us what's the rationale behind TotalEnergies' involvement in the Movin'On ecosystem.
Yes, with pleasure. So TotalEnergies is a founding member of Movin'On ecosystem, and we're an active partner. We are all convinced with all the other partners of Movin'On that to reach the transformation of mobility toward a sustainable mobility, we need to act collectively. And each player has a role to play in this transition. And for TotalEnergies, an active player of energy transition, and we are a broad energy company, so we are on all kinds of energy that can have a role to play also. But we decided to focus in Yaoundé and in Africa on electric mobility.
And Cameroon was the host country, you mentioned it. Why Africa?
Africa. In fact, we don't talk too much about Africa. And the last Movin'On Summit, for instance, we were in Canada, and we talked about initiatives in the States, in Europe, in Asia. But we decided to really focus on Africa initiatives because there are plenty of pioneering initiatives that were worth to focus on.
Géraldine, how these local initiatives that you just mentioned support the energy transition in Africa?
In fact, every initiative is a test and learn process. So we need to begin somewhere, and we need to have some projects, some experiment from which we learn, and we learn with our partners also. We will learn with our customers, and our team also in Cameroon very dedicated to this project, or in Kenya with the battery swapping for two-wheelers. Learn a lot and are ready after that to accelerate the deployment. It was also important to have all this ecosystem because to go forward in Africa, we need to convince every stakeholder, especially public authorities, for instance, because transforming the regulation or adapting the regulation is key also to accelerating electric mobility in Africa.
And there was a great enthusiasm. This is what I felt because I was also there. And yes, it was very dynamic ecosystem. Yes. Thank you, Géraldine, for sharing. Thank you. It was great to have you.
And thank you to Cameroon teams also.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And this has been a great opportunity, of course, to find out more about the initiatives that you support and put them in perspective and explore scalability challenges. So, is Africa ready for an electric vehicle revolution? To answer this question, this afternoon's program includes exclusive reports to explore the opportunities and challenges generated by electric transport in Africa, insider feedback on pioneering electric mobility projects from Cameroon to Kenya, and insights from our special guest, Nancy van Dijk, Program Director of Sustainable Mobility for All and Senior Economist at the World Bank, on a vital question: how can Africa leapfrog towards sustainable mobility? But before we dive into the details, let's get some background on the new mobility challenges in Africa.
Globally, the future of the automobile looks increasingly electric. This is primarily due to regulatory measures such as impending bans on the sale of combustion engine vehicles, continuous improvement in battery and charging technologies, and of course, changing consumer behavior. The end of the combustion engine in Europe is expected in 2035. By then, the world's main automobile markets, including the USA and China, will only sell electric vehicles. But what about in Africa? How exactly will this trend toward electric mobility play out in sub-Saharan Africa? What are the opportunities and challenges generated by the future of electric transport in the region? While transport accounts for 10% of Africa's global greenhouse emissions, its vehicle fleet is expected to grow from 25 million vehicles today to 58 million by 2040, driven by urbanization and rising incomes. With such an expanding fleet, the challenge for sub-Saharan Africa will be to promote more sustainable mobility and avoid the risk of becoming a dumping ground for used and unwanted ICE vehicles from around the world. The prevalence of used vehicles in much of the continent is a problem. 40% of used vehicles exported worldwide end up in Africa. 85% of the car fleet in Africa is second-hand. This situation is largely due to accessibility problems and insufficient regulation, with many countries allowing the import of vehicles over 15 years old. On the electric side, some African governments have announced targets for fleet electrification and incentive for EV adoption, such as reduced electricity costs and tax exemptions in Rwanda, Kenya and Togo. But disparities remain and the journey is only just beginning. At the same time, an ecosystem of startups specialized in EV, focusing on electric 2- and 3-wheelers, is emerging. This market has great potential, as shown by the upward trend in Asia. Electric 2-wheelers run on small battery with less complex technology than a car and can therefore be recharged via an independent mini-grid in areas that are not served by national coverage. Let's not forget that the lack of electricity in certain regions in Africa remains a major obstacle. 50% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa, including rural and urban areas, do not have access to electricity to carry out daily tasks. On the other hand, Africa has significant potential in terms of renewable energy to meet its diverse needs. Despite the challenges of governance, financing and equity, change is in the air and a transformation is building speed. Commercial vehicles and micro-mobility are key levers for development and transitioning to sustainable and electric mobility in Africa.
The time is ripe for electric 2-wheelers. Analysis shows that cost-efficient electric 2- and 3-wheelers are spreading much faster than other electric vehicles on the continent. Lightweight, battery-powered transport models are becoming very popular in major African cities, where the number of people who need to get to work each day is growing rapidly. Kenya has become a hotbed for the growth of electric 2-wheelers after several startups chose to set up shop in the country's capital, including TotalEnergies-backed Ampersand, thus encouraging innovative mobility solutions for 2-wheelers. So, are electric motorcycles the future of sustainable mobility in Africa? Let's find out.
Affordable and versatile, motorcycles have been a favorite means of transportation in Africa for decades. More than 9 out of 10 motorcycles on the continent are purchased for commercial use as taxis or delivery services. Overall, it is estimated that over 30 million motorcycle taxi drivers help their customers move around daily across sub-Saharan Africa. These are the people who can build the future of electrical mobility on the continent as they transition to electric motorcycles.
The only way we can help these young people to transition, one is to look at the cost, because these are young people who don't have cash money to purchase these bikes. And once we make them more expensive, then this means that they will not be able to transition. They will prefer going back to the other option. But when it is competitive in the market that they can easily afford, then this will be as an opportunity for them to transition.
The affordability of electric vehicles and the availability of reliable electrical sources are the two main obstacles in the way of sustainable mobility. In this regard, as the continent aims to go greener, the two-wheeler market seems to be the best target in the short term. First reason, commercial use of motorcycles results in a higher average distance travelled per vehicle, which improves the total cost of ownership of an electric two-wheeler, operation and maintenance costs included, compared to traditional motorcycles. Therefore, in a context of soaring gas prices, electric motorcycles not only help reduce CO2 emissions, but also improve the income of taxi drivers who typically support their families and communities. This is a major argument when convincing taxi drivers to transition toward a cleaner vehicle.
I wanted to give a couple of numbers there. So, and this is sort of like a real case from Rwanda. Right now especially with the increase in fuel prices, we're saving them on the odds of 40 to 45% per kilometer. And so, I mean, though a lot of commercial motorcycle users come in from the countryside, sometimes with very little education, they're very business savvy. They know their business, they know their cost. And so being able to tell them, hey, not only is this something that performs better, but gives you in total with the cost saving energy, the cost savings on energy and the cost savings on maintenance, we're increasing their take-home pay by more than 40%. And so if I go to any corner in Douala and say, hey, who wants to make 40% more today, probably a lot of hands go up.
Secondly, because electric two-wheelers have a small battery, they can also benefit from a battery swap model, where a depleted battery is replaced with a fully charged battery from a designated swap station in just a few minutes. Ampersand, an innovative e-mobility startup that operates in Rwanda and in Kenya, is one of the main players in this new market.
The battery swap model, I think, is very important to this. And so I think the term that we're using right now is a battery as a service. And so it's the most complicated piece of the machine. It's complicated for anybody. And so I think it's something very new for them. And so offering the battery as a service, it de-risks it for that customer. And so we're able to keep the motorcycle cost in line with what they're used to, and then also with that, keeping the fuel cost, the energy cost, lower, cheaper than petrol. And so when we offer a new battery, it's kind of like the customer gets a software upgrade. It just performs better, and they don't have to understand it. They don't have to know how to work the battery. They just have to use it, and I think that's very, very, very important for them. It's a reliable battery. I think this is where we put a lot of our focus. A battery that's fit for purpose, that is affordable for the user. And so many of our batteries have done more than 1,000, 2,000 cycles, are still working very well, and deliver a consistent and powerful experience for the user.
In their quest to support green mobility, TotalEnergies and the Movin'On ecosystem have championed Ampersand since 2019.
It was also a way for us, TotalEnergies, to learn about this new emerging market of two-wheelers and battery swapping. And this is what we are looking for when we invest in startups also. And we are committed also to give support to the startup in which we invest. And we can also provide visibility. And this is what we did when we presented Ampersand for the Movin'On Startup Challenge 2 years ago. And Ampersand won the challenge. And it was a great way for them to have a good exposure to all the Movin'On ecosystem and all the partners. And then financial support, visibility and promotion. And last but not least, of course, a big company like TotalEnergies can enable business and bring opportunities. And it's what we began to do a few years ago when we set up a call with our affiliate in Kenya, and Dennis is here. And so we set up this call because Ampersand told us that they wanted to develop in Kenya. And right from the beginning, the affiliate were very interested in this project, and then went on the discussions. And here we are with 3 service stations, with battery swapping with the Ampersand solution in Kenya, and just one in Rwanda, but some to come, I think, with our new affiliate. And to illustrate also our commitment for the energy transition with startups, TotalEnergies opened on May, launched a new accelerator, which named TotalEnergies On, and it's an accelerator specifically dedicated to electricity, the whole value chain of electricity, from production to distribution, and of course, e-mobility.
By setting up a network of battery charging stations, Ampersand has made it easier for taxi drivers to work and earn a living with full peace of mind. Battery swaps are faster than refueling, cost less than a tank of gas, and take the driver further. This seamless efficiency is made possible through the monitoring of live data analytics of the charging station network, battery locations, and their level of charge.
We spend a lot of development time on the software that sort of runs our battery network. And so making sure the batteries are in the right place at the right time and charged and ready for the customer to give them, again, a consistent experience. Because what we want to do is deliver performance that is as good, preferably better, than what they're traditionally used to.
Customers in Kenya, for example, if they buy this kind of bike, the next question is, of course, where can I charge my bike? So us as Total Marketing Kenya, we are providing that service in partnership with Ampersand here, and we've already done it in 3 stations. And so we are here to provide that convenience and to make sure that we are able to scale it up into other towns and be able to be present for that customer.
Moreover, Ampersand and its partners take care of servicing and spare parts, ensuring that electrified motorcycles remain a safe and reliable means of transportation for everyone. As they get acquainted with their new electric motorcycle, taxi drivers are also reminded of basic safety procedures and equipment. Last but not least, to help drivers switch from traditional motorcycles to more ecological models, Ampersand has created financing schemes that alleviate capital costs. Customers also have the option of electrifying their current motorcycle by adding a battery pack system in place of the fuel tank. Today, there is no obstacle in making this new eco-friendly technology available throughout Africa, bringing positive social change, providing that public and private stakeholders join in and help.
No one can go it alone. You know, like we talked about ambition to achieve net zero by 2050, but it always ends with together with society. And here society means many stakeholders. Governments, the energy players, the car manufacturers, there's a whole ecosystem of stakeholders that need to come together. But for me, for this to really work, like the speakers earlier talked about, the key success factor lies between having a smooth relationship, proper coordination between the public authorities and the different players in the private sector.
What we expect from the authority, first of all, is for the governments to embrace the new technologies. Number 2 is for the government maybe to reduce the taxes that they charge the imports on the motorcycles. I think when we cut the taxes, then it will reduce the value of the cost of that motorcycle, then it will be affordable to through the people. So what we expect is the government at least to look at, to embrace first of all the new technology and reduce the taxes that are taxed on the motorcycles.
Manufacturing, assembly, or retrofit locally means a new industrial filière and also new jobs opportunities for men and for women that are more and more involved in this market.
By electrifying its motorcycle fleet, Africa will be taking a big step toward a zero-carbon future.
After exploring the challenges and opportunities generated by two-wheeler electrification with the example of Ampersand, it's time to dive into commercial car electrification by looking at Greenride, the first e-mobility solution in Cameroon. The debate on e-mobility can be controversial and often lacks evidence to support policy choices. For EV to be an asset rather than a liability, we need to understand 6 key considerations relating to electricity supply, which are economic, financial, social, governance, regulatory, as well as physical. So, what role will commercial electric vehicles play in Africa's overall energy transition? Take a look.
Electric vehicles are still rare in most parts of Africa. Even South Africa, the continent's largest market, where only 1,000 of around 12 million cars on the road are electric. Why is adoption so slow? The list of obstacles is long, from the cost of purchase to fierce competition from imports of used vehicles, an often unfavorable regulatory framework, and the lack of recharging infrastructure. Yet, there are exciting opportunities to develop more sustainable transport systems, promoting low-carbon mobility just waiting to be explored.
Du point de vue de l'environnement, en ce qui concerne le transport, il faut noter qu'il y a eu des évolutions au fil du temps qui se sont greffées un tout petit peu à la dynamique que nous connaissons en Afrique et ailleurs. C'est-à-dire que la problématique de la mobilité telle qu'on la connaît sur d'autres cieux a commencé à se manifester sur notre pays. Autrefois, on était sur des mobilités à 4 roues. On s'est retrouvé par la suite avec l'urbanisation très forte à avoir une évolution vers la mobilité à 2 roues, y compris dans les grandes métropoles, et de façon progressive à la mobilité partagée que nous connaissons aujourd'hui. Et encore récemment, des structures qui se mettent en place pour des modalités de transport avec des conditions différentes de celles que nous avons connues jusqu'ici. Une sorte d'ubérisation, si je puis me permettre le terme, du transport, et qui appelle effectivement à davantage enrichir l'écosystème de tout ce qui est mobilité. Donc le gouvernement, dans ce cadre-là, veille à ce que tout se passe dans de bonnes conditions. Il y a encore un certain nombre d'actions qui sont attendues, notamment en termes d'accompagnement, en termes de régulation et en termes de suivi, de façon à ce que tout se passe correctement. Mais je pense qu'on est résolument, du point de vue mobilité, on est résolument engagé vers une évolution, vers une transition, et notamment vers une transition qui nous amène vers la mobilité propre, vers la mobilité électrique.
In this context, a pioneering project was born, the first electric mobility service in Cameroon. TotalEnergies brought together 2 local mobility players, Cameroon's vehicle for hire leader, Greenride, and 3S Motors, a well-known car dealer with a fleet of 300 vehicles for long-term rental. Their combined complementary know-how gave rise to Greenride.
L'idée, c'est de proposer un service de mobilité aux entreprises et au grand public le plus accessible possible.
Donc, juste peut-être un petit descriptif du service Greenride, comment ça fonctionne?
Alors, le service Greenride est vraiment intégré dans l'offre Global Easy Ride, donc à Yaoundé pour le moment, du fait de la station de Yaoundé qui propose une borne de recharge, 2 véhicules fournis par notre partenaire 3S ici présent, et donc le process de commande habituel, plus tout un démarchage commercial qu'on a effectué auprès de nos clientèles entreprises.
C'est un projet ambitieux et disruptif qui a été mis en place, sur lequel nous avons décidé effectivement d'investir, parce que nous croyons effectivement à cette transformation. Alors, Total, en tant que fournisseur d'une énergie propre, a investi en termes de mise en place du dispositif, c'est-à-dire la station solarisée et le service d'électromobilité qui l'accompagne, c'est-à-dire le service de recharge, et a été la tête de pont de cet écosystème qui s'est mis en place avec EasyRide, qui lui est sur l'opération, et avec 3S Motors qui est sur l'équipement de véhicules.
A resolutely ecosystem and business-oriented initiative.
Ce projet, ça nous a permis en fait de travailler sur un sujet qui était vraiment un sujet de transformation pour l'ensemble des 3 partenaires, un sujet innovant et également un sujet de rupture vis-à-vis du marché de la mobilité au Cameroun. Et concrètement, donc, ça nous a permis en fait d'apporter donc une image, un regard vraiment multidimension, que ce soit technique, que ce soit financier, que ce soit client aussi, et bien sûr développement durable. Ça nous a permis également de développer donc, des compétences, des connaissances au sein de nos trois business. Ça nous a permis de développer une solution robuste qui correspond aux attentes donc, de nos parties prenantes et de nos clients finaux. Et puis aussi de rassembler vraiment de l'expertise, donc avec des acteurs donc, innovants et avant-gardistes par rapport justement à cette électromobilité. Et puis en termes de business model, on a vraiment travaillé sur différents types de business models, mais à chaque fois on a intégré nos spécificités. Donc à nous trois, on a fait attention également à la taille de l'entreprise. Et ça nous a permis vraiment de créer, de développer cette valeur qu'on retrouve donc dans nos trois écosystèmes et à destination bien entendu de l'ensemble de nos clients. Donc vraiment beaucoup de valeur et du business.
6 months after launching Greenride, more than 400 trips covering 11,000 kilometers. 60% lower fuel bill and 2.5 tons of CO2 avoided. 7,500 kilowatt-hour of solar surplus re-injected into the petrol station, equivalent of 3 months of electricity consumption. These are extremely encouraging results, especially as the offer has been so well received by the public, thus helping raise awareness about EV.
D'abord le confort. Quand je suis entré, j'étais vraiment ébahi. Grande était ma surprise. Pas de bruit, pas de... je sais pas. C'est confortable. Et quand on amène ce genre de produits, ça nous aide à préserver l'environnement. Très, très fier. Et je vais vous dire un secret. Je risque de me transformer en commercial, comment dirais-je, bénévole pour Greenride et TotalEnergies. Donc j'en dirai beaucoup plus à mes amis et mes frères. Bien sûr, c'est une multinationale, messieurs. Quand Total s'engage à lancer un produit comme ça, c'est du modernisme. Et ça fait la fierté aux Camerounais.
Là, je ne savais pas que ce véhicule est chargé à l'énergie solaire, mais je pense que c'est une bonne chose. C'est une bonne chose pour l'environnement, pour limiter vraiment la pollution dans notre pays.
C'est vrai, bon, quand on a installé le projet, moi-même je me posais des questions, mais depuis que le projet est installé, il y a des clients qui passent ici, ils me demandent à quand l'ouverture du projet à la clientèle. Il y a des véhicules hybrides au Cameroun. Il y a des véhicules hybrides. Donc les clients n'attendent que le lancement du projet pour passer consommer le produit.
This pilot project was aimed primarily at a specific target group, vehicles for hire, with the intention of opening to the general public in the future.
La typologie de clientèle qu'on a eue, c'est quand même 90% d'entreprises, 10% de particuliers. Ça aussi, c'est une donnée importante qui prouve que l'entreprise, de manière générale, aura un rôle à jouer dans cette transition, dans la sensibilisation du grand public aussi, parce que le grand public, c'est aussi des salariés d'entreprise. Et ça commence par là.
Sur les particuliers.
Exactement, exactement.
Je pense aussi, oui, que c'est par les entreprises qu'on va essayer de rentrer dans cette phase de développement. J'encourage beaucoup de sociétés, moi j'en ai déjà une à disposition à Douala pour mes clients en termes de voitures de prêt de clientèle VIP, mais j'encourage les sociétés vraiment à venir nous voir, Total et nous, pour installer peut-être des bornes, leur fournir des véhicules pour tout ce qui est livraison ville, parce qu'en Europe c'est très développé en fait. Par exemple, les PTT en France, ils livrent essentiellement avec des véhicules électriques très souvent, justement pour préserver. Donc je pense que ça passera, oui, par les entreprises et le partage des véhicules à disposition.
EV are generally 20 to 50% more expensive than an equivalent internal combustion engine and therefore inaccessible for most individuals in sub-Saharan Africa. Moreover, they are not available in sufficient numbers, a situation that is likely to continue over the next decade as passenger cars will be the last type of vehicle to be electrified. Commercial fleets, therefore, seem to be a key entry point to transition the fleet, especially as the cost of ownership TCO for EV is favourable compared to thermal vehicles. And what about the role of public policy?
C'est primordial. Il nous faut l'aide de l'État, c'est clair. Ça ne peut pas se faire sans eux. Il faut revoir la taxation. Aujourd'hui, elle n'est pas adaptée. Juste un exemple, des véhicules de cette taille payent normalement 30% de droits de douane et la TVA, ce qui nous fait monter avec les frais autour de 55%. Mais aujourd'hui, cette voiture paye des droits d'assises, c'est-à-dire 12,5% sur toute la taxation plus le prix du véhicule. Cette taxation a été faite pour les véhicules très polluants, donc les gros SUV et les véhicules de cylindrée supérieurs à 2,5 litres. Donc clairement, aujourd'hui, nous ne devrions pas être dans ce créneau. Donc j'appelle encore une deuxième fois, une troisième fois à l'État de vraiment bien regarder ça. C'est essentiel que ça passe par là.
Je voulais aller dans le même sens que M. Assad. Il faut vraiment un accompagnement de l'État. Parce qu'en fait, tout à l'heure, on parlait de gains. Sur les 1000 litres économisés en 6 mois, ça veut dire, en sachant que l'État subventionne le carburant, ça veut dire que l'État a énormément à gagner à l'intérieur. Et après, il y a ce facteur qui est dû à la revente de l'énergie. Voilà. Comment est-ce qu'on gère la revente de l'énergie? Ce n'est pas encadré pour le moment. Donc, il faut véritablement que l'État accompagne les entreprises en ce sens.
The Shared Electric Mobility Service proposed by Greenride is a pilot project based on a test and learn approach. The objective, demonstrate the value of this kind of initiative and learn how to deploy EV better and faster so the greatest number of people can benefit.
Le next step, c'est de ne pas s'arrêter. C'est celui de prendre avantage de ce qui s'est fait depuis quelques mois. Le marché et l'environnement nous ont donné des enseignements, des leçons qui nous permettront de poursuivre notre déploiement. Donc, c'est déjà de procéder aux différents ajustements, que ce soit au niveau de nos infrastructures, que ce soit au niveau de l'offre, de la présentation de ce que nous faisons à notre public, et puis l'écosystème également que nous allons créer avec l'ensemble des parties prenantes qui sont notamment représentées ici et pourquoi pas d'autres, de façon à pouvoir accélérer la diffusion de cette transition-là au sein de notre pays. Donc, de notre point de vue, ça aura un aspect infrastructurel, ça aura un aspect sensibilisation, ça aura un aspect formation, ça aura un aspect accompagnement. Donc, c'est cela que nous visons pour aller plus loin dans ce qui a déjà été fait.
Alors, nous, les next steps, c'est effectivement exploiter les résultats de ce premier pilote pour finalement montrer par l'exemple à d'autres. Enfin, ça va être vraiment un outil de pédagogie pour continuer de convaincre nos différentes parties prenantes et pour pouvoir donc les convaincre de basculer à cette mobilité plus durable, qui a vraiment un intérêt tant pour la santé que le climat, et donc pouvoir dupliquer ce type d'expérimentation dans d'autres stations et puis dans d'autres territoires.
Nous avons eu connaissance de diverses expérimentations que nous devons transformer maintenant en réalisation durable. Mais comment capter ce potentiel? Pour capter ce potentiel, il nous faudra des actions communes, et je pense que quand on prend un petit peu la synthèse des tables rondes, c'est des actions communes d'un quatuor. Ce quatuor, il doit être formé évidemment des pouvoirs publics, donc une volonté des pouvoirs publics, des fournisseurs d'énergie, comme TotalEnergies, des constructeurs automobiles, pour amener justement des véhicules, et alors tous nos partenaires de type VTC, clients, sociétés qui décident de se mettre à l'énergie électrique et donc de promouvoir justement ce type de transport. Ce quatuor, pour moi, il devra rapidement mettre en place des synergies qui permettront dans un premier temps de co-construire une feuille de route cohérente, comme nous avons écrit les premières lignes aujourd'hui, et dans un second temps, de mettre en place des jalons permettant d'accélérer et de passer de projets pilotes à une vulgarisation massive qui feront, je pense, la fierté de l'ensemble d'entre nous, des acteurs qui produisent, distribuent et utilisent une énergie propre, disponible et accessible.
Could this be the key to creating an ecosystem capable of driving the transition towards electric mobility in Africa?
The electric mobility landscape for 2 and 4 wheels is contrasted. Although the total cost of ownership is advantageous, the upfront costs for 4-wheel vehicles are currently prohibitive. The Greenride solution is a good example of how governments, development partners and the private sector can create a favourable ecosystem for electric vehicles in the region. Against this backdrop, the opportunity for leapfrogging towards climate-friendly, sustainable mobility that has not yet been discussed thoroughly. To address a few questions surrounding this crucial theme, I'm pleased to welcome Nancy van Dijk, Sum4All Program Manager and Senior Economist at the World Bank. Hello, Nancy. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Asha.
Nancy, you represent the Sum4All program, which is one of the most active institutional partner in mobility issues in the Global South. Can you briefly explain your approach?
So let me start by thanking you and introducing Sustainable Mobility for All. So this coalition was set up in 2017 by the World Bank, and it brings together development banks, UN agencies, civil society, and a few private companies. At the time, the ambition was really to transform the discussion on transportation and really shape what this sustainable mobility agenda would look like. So we started as an advocacy platform, arguing that transportation is more than providing access or connecting people to opportunities. Transportation is really about access, but not only. It's about making sure that this access is environmental friendly, so it has to be green. It has also to be a transportation that is safe and efficient. And here we were, 2 years into existence, defining what sustainable mobility is. So it's about providing access to all. It's about green mobility, efficiency, and safety. So imagine the agenda. It's more than access. It's about this comprehensive and ambitious agenda of delivering on those 4 goals. So we started as an advocacy platform and quickly moved into giving policy advice and feeling knowledge as we were approached by decision makers asking us, yes, it's great, this ambition, but how do we get there? So in this journey, Michelin has been a key institutional partner in enabling us to grow this platform from an advocacy platform to a really knowledge and policy advice platform. So to get back to your question on what did we do in terms of approach to countries in the Global South? So our approach has been twofold. First, we piloted the use of this knowledge and the tools that we developed through this coalition in South Africa. And we helped the government of South Africa to devise their future program on infrastructure in transportation, to make sure that indeed it is a program that delivers on sustainable mobility. The second important contribution that we did in the Global South was to help rebalance the debate on the future of mobility and in particular on electrical mobility. As we were getting closer to COP26 in Glasgow, we realized that the debate on electrical mobility was actually quite biased. It was driven by the interests of countries in the Global North, the developed countries, largely to promote a decarbonization agenda. But we were forgetting one important consideration for countries in the Global South. How about development? How do we ensure that transportation meets developmental needs and not only decarbonization needs? So we felt that we had a responsibility vis-à-vis of the international community to really rebalance this discussion on electrical mobility and unpack this debate. Is it really the best way forward for countries in the global south? So we contributed with data, evidence, facts, debates in Glasgow and at COP27 to really ensure that we could give the best policy advice to countries in the global south on electrical mobility.
Well, it seems that the issue of sustainable transport is gaining momentum in the African political agenda. What are your thoughts?
Indeed, and it's a fantastic development because frankly, we were not there at COP21 in Paris when transportation was barely mentioned, or even when all the countries agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals. None of them were related to transportation. So the fact that we are here now in 2022 discussing centrally transportation and what the future of mobility would look like to make sure that it is helping resolving climate change and it is also helping our future towards more sustainability is actually a fantastic thing and is greatly welcome. So that awareness is fantastic, but now we need action. And so it is essential that in those global discussions, we put transportation quite centrally as a solution sector that will help resolve the climate crisis.
What do you think would be the key success factors for this leapfrog to happen?
So leapfrogging will require a lot of financing and probably even concessional financing. So here, development banks will have a key role to play in enabling this leapfrogging in developing countries and the adoption of the latest technology. We will also, I think, need a lot of capacity building in developing countries and in developed countries to make sure that those technologies are indeed absorbed, adopted, and ensure a really good future sustainable development. But I would like to make two other important points that I think deserve more attention. We will need to advise countries on the best way forward. This may or may not necessitate investment in electrical mobility. So let me explain you. I think a lot of the discussion on electrical mobility, especially in Glasgow, was driven by global advocacy and probably advocacy led by developed countries. But we need more. We need data, evidence research. We need the right policy advice so that the solutions we are recommending in developed countries are indeed the most appropriate solutions for them. I'm a strong believer, and the partnership is a strong believer, that there is no, at this point, one solution for all. We will need to develop scenarios and develop pathways for developing countries to make sure that their future of the mobility is indeed fully adequate and tailored to their country circumstances. So what does it mean practically? At one extreme, you have a number of countries in Africa that do not even have access to basic electricity. So why would we promote electrical mobility in those countries? Should they not first invest into energy and make sure that they have access to energy first and foremost? At the other extreme, you have a number of countries in Africa that have renewable energy, that have investments flowing in for expanding the grid and expanding access to electricity. So in those countries, electrical mobility may be a desirable option going forward. In between, you have a range of countries that we need to attend to. In those countries, we have a lot of development needs to meet. Those countries may not have even access to basic transportation needs. So in those countries, we first need to allocate public resource to public transportation before investing in charging station and investing into individual cars that are electric. So let's consider the range of options that are on the table instead of just going in one direction and ignoring a number of needs that those countries have to attend. My second comment concerns technology. At this point, electrical mobility is viewed and is the available technology. But let's be open. There may be other technologies coming in. Let's avoid locking in all those countries in a certain pathway and in a certain technological pathway, and be open to research that will come up with new technologies.
And referring to COP27, has it delivered its promises so far for a just transition to sustainable mobility in Africa?
So I believe that COP27 has delivered on many grounds. First of all, there were a lot of events, a lot of announcements, a lot of initiatives launched at COP27 around transportation. And I think this is very good. In Paris, in COP21, we were not there. We were just starting to get transportation into the conversation on climate change. We are in a very different position. We were in a different position at COP27, and so it's a very welcome development. The second important outcome is we have really broadened the conversation on climate change at COP27, including now adaptation as a key component of the discussion. And that's a very important component for countries in the global south that do not contribute in a major way to greenhouse gas emissions, and for which mitigation is not a major consideration. Adaptation is finding ways to adapt to increasing climate risk is an important consideration. So by including now adaptation in the conversation, we are able to bring all those countries into a collective discussion on climate change, being not only about mitigation, but also adaptation. So I think this is a very good development. Third important development and outcome is on finance. It is now very clear that development banks and concessionary finance will have a key role to play in enabling the transition towards development and addressing the climate risk. We're now making major headways into giving responsibility to development banks in terms of providing that finance. And I think this is an excellent development. We had also some announcement about a new fund on loss and damage that will need to be shaped up in the coming COPs, and we'll see that this funding will be critical to address the consequences of climate change in the least developing countries. In terms of what we should look forward in the next COP, I think one important component that has not yet been given enough prominence is bringing on board non-state actors. For the past few years, the conversation on climate change and the solutions have been driven by public actors, state actors. We cannot continue ignoring non-state actors, including private sector, that are thinking about ways to address climate change that may have solutions. They have to be integrated in the conversation, in this collective thinking on how to address climate change in the future. So I'm very hopeful that COP28 will look at how to integrate non-state actors in the conversation and in the solutions for climate change.
Nancy, thank you very much for your valuable insights on global challenges of energy transition in Africa.
Thank you very much, Asha, and goodbye.
What an inspiring way to close this special edition. Thank you to all for attending Movin'On Inside, and a big thank you to all the partners involved, especially to TotalEnergies in Cameroon. See you soon for the next episode of Movin'On Inside. In the meantime, stay tuned via Movin'On Connect and our social networks. Bye-bye.